Is anyone else kind of like over 5-inch freestyle? Before you leave a mean comment, hear me out, hear me out.
Well, you got about 10 seconds, funny man.
I talk to a lot of people that fly FPV of all different skill and experience levels, and it seems like more and more people are moving away from the 5-inch platform and into 3.5-inch and even tiny whoops, even for freestyle. So today I thought we'd take a deeper look into this and find out, is everybody else kind of over 5-inch frames? My first exposure to FPV was the racing aspect, but after only a few days of being obsessed, I saw the words that would change my life forever: FPV freestyle. And as soon as I saw it, I was hooked. I knew this is what I wanted to learn how to do. I come from a skating background, but I'm 43 now, so I'm not trying to hit 5-stair gaps anymore, but I still like to fear for my life to be reminded that I'm alive, and for some reason, FPV does that really well. I still remember what it felt like when I did my first power loop on a 5-inch quad. I was ecstatic. This was basically the first trick that I'd ever successfully done. At this point, it was an accomplishment just to take off, fly around, and land without something catastrophic happening. Parts sucked back then. Quads sucked, motors sucked, flight controllers sucked, videos sucked, everything sucked. But we loved it because you could fly a drone around in first person view and it was fucking awesome. I think most folks will agree it was Sharpoo's Left Behind video that really started introducing the masses to FPV freestyle. At the time, FPV was still fairly underground, so components and parts were still hard to come by. But those early pilots pushed those early components to their absolute limits. People like Schizo, Mr. Steel, Sharpoo, Metal Danny, pushing their quads to the absolute limit with those early components and no sponsor in sight. Back then, you really had to know your shit to get your quad to fly even half decent. People were still using Clean Flight. Beta Flight was a fork of it that was still in its infancy. And back then, it was a flex to put your analog video signal in the bottom corner of your screen so people can see how bad the breakup was that you had to fly through when you were doing your tricks. Being an underground hobby meant nobody was really optimizing parts for smaller quads. We ran the 250mm size, that's 250mm from motor to motor, also now known as a 5-inch quad. We ran those because we needed all that room to fit our power distribution boards, our giant flight controllers, 4 single ESCs, the huge VTXs that we used back then in cameras. We needed all that space to cram everything in. As for the smaller craft, like we had a couple little things, but companies weren't really making high performance parts or trying to push micros that much. You were lucky just to get a little 2-inch that you could hover around and fly, let alone trying to freestyle a micro like it was a 5-inch and put something like that on YouTube. If you were flying a tiny whoop back then, it was probably a Blade Inductrix. Pretty much one of the only whoops you could get back then, and it flew like shit, but you could fly FPV inside of your house, so it was super sick. But that all changed when Tiny Whoop introduced the new high-powered brushed motors for whoops, and motherfucking Mike Chin did the world's first Tiny Whoop building dive and power loop. I remember when this video came out, it was kind of a big deal. If you tried to dive a building previously on a stock Inductrix, you would just get crazy prop washout and it would slam into the ground. You just didn't have enough power to do that. But here we have Mike Chin doing a fucking building dive on a tiny whoop. Then, while there was a bunch of discussion whether or not you could power loop with these new motors, Mike Chin made another video, yes you can. And thus, tiny whoops were a viable platform for FPV freestyle. Around this time, we were getting new motors and everything, but we also switched power leads for the first time from whatever came stock, I don't even remember, to the new and improved JST 2.0. A lot of folks now saw the potential in micros and tiny whoops for freestyle. RotorX was a company that made specific 3-inch freestyle frames and motors. They even made an HD camera that snaps onto the top of the canopy so you can record your 3-inch in HD. RotorX even made a really cool cross-country road trip video where they got an old RV, drove it across the country, and flew 3 inches everywhere they stopped. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. So you can get relatively the same feeling of flying a 5-inch for freestyle, but on something a lot smaller and safer, and it opens up a ton more places for you to be able to fly. I'm completely fine bringing a tiny whoop to a playground and just giving it hell, or my Grinderino to an empty parking lot and just ripping around. The smaller your quad is, the more the world around you really opens up for freestyle. In 2024, we have a lot more options for micros. We have some really good bind and flies. We have all-in-ones and motors that can handle pretty much whatever we want to throw at them. Hell, we're doing trippy spins on whoops as a standard trick. Try showing that to somebody from like 2016. They'd punch you in the face for being a filthy liar. Just take a look at Min-Chan flying his Tiny Whoop or Murder's FPV on a micros, and you'll have all the proof that you need that micros are a viable option for some pretty sick freestyle videos. Especially with digital FPV systems now and the upgrade in DVR quality, you don't need to put a $500 camera on top of your quad to make something that other people will enjoy watching. Now, Cinewhoops will probably always need to have some sort of external camera on them, but as far as freestyle goes, do we really need 5-inch frames anymore? Let me start by saying I love 5-inch. I love my Demibots. Freestyle 5-inch was my first love, and you cannot 100% replicate the feeling of a 5-inch on a micro. But there are a lot of advantages to flying a smaller quad, and you can get roughly the same performance out of them. For starters, the batteries are way smaller and usually a lot cheaper. Tiny Whoop ones for sure, but even the 850 G&Bs that I run are like $16 versus a $30 plus battery for a 5-inch quad, and you can cram way more of them in your bag. The motors are usually cheaper as well as the all-in-ones sometimes. But you can get an analog Mob 6 for like $100, which is a fantastic way to get into FPV and then just upgrade the motors later. Plus, them being so light means crashes aren't really so serious. They tend to kind of just bounce around and take hits a lot better than quads that are carrying a lot of weight. Video quality was an issue, but like I said, with new digital systems coming out, that's not really a problem anymore. The Nano V3 cam from HD0 looks absolutely fantastic, and it fits in a Tiny Whoop. If you fly DJI, you can build basically a flying VTX that's just an air unit with props. Micros are getting really good these days, and with Remote ID coming out in America, I do think 5-inch quads are going to get a lot more scrutinized than micros would. I mean, imagine the FAA pursuing a case against what is essentially a toy. Those Airhog helicopters that you can buy at Walmart have less control and way more than a Tiny Whoop does. Plus, I highly doubt those are going to start being required to come with Remote ID pre-installed when they sell them at fucking Walmart. There for sure is a different in-flight characteristics over a 5-inch quad and a 3.5, but honestly with the Grinderinos, I feel like I'm 80% of the way there. They don't fly exactly like my 5-inches do, but you know, if I can trade 80% of the flight characteristics for 80% more places to fly, yeah, I'll take that any day. I also feel like the creativity in frame design is kind of dying out. It used to be every month a new innovative frame was dropping, but I feel like nowadays we're lucky to see a new frame once a year that isn't just some regurgitated version of an old one that's now labeled as the HD version. And I get it, most things have been done and it's hard to innovate when your company's just about the bottom line. But we used to have a lot more creative people out there designing frames just to make good frames. Falcon Rat is definitely holding down that spirit with his long range frames, as are a few other people. And I do complain a lot about FPV getting too popular, but I understand, you know, times change, things get mainstream, so we're not going to get into that here. But so you can make cool shit just to make cool shit. You don't always have to be motivated by profit. If the thing that you make is cool enough, the money will come on its own. I think it's good that we have options. I own a 7-inch quad, I own several micros and several 5-inches, but these days when I go out to fly, I find myself reaching for the micros more often than not. Maybe it's because I live in a big crowded city, maybe it's because I've been flying nothing but 5-inch freestyle for 8 years straight, but there's just something about the little guys that I really enjoy. I can ride my bike anywhere in the city with a small backpack and I can just sit down and fly. Nobody even cares. Tiny Whoops are super quiet. They look like toys. I do think 5-inch will always be king of freestyle, and I do have a special place in my heart for those dang old 250 millimeter motor to motor frames. But with all these regulations coming and industry shifting, I really do see more and more people moving on to micros. And I'm cool with it. After talking to quite a few people, I don't think I'm alone in this feeling, but I would like to know what everybody else thinks. Do you think that the industry is kind of moving away from 5-inch frames? Are you moving away from them? Are you enjoying micros more? Well, let me know in a comment below. That's how you do engagement. All right, I think that's going to do it. That's the end of today's video. I do appreciate everybody for watching. Thank you very much. I do promise also next time will be better because next video is going to be the We Bleed Northeast Whoop Championships where I'm a guest announcer. So I'm going to make a whole little video about that. Make sure you come back if you want to see that. You can press subscribe if you want. I don't really fucking care if you do. But if you do like these videos, you can watch this one right here. I make a bunch of videos, one every week. There is one of them. And also I have a Patreon. It's the sole source of my income. I don't put ads in the front of my videos. I use affiliate links. If you fuck with this channel, let me get like $5 and I'll keep making videos. Okay, I love you. Bye.